Today on What It's Like, this episode is the 4,000 sub episode. Thank you guys so much for growing the channel to 4,000 subs. It's crazy that this channel is not... We just started it back in September, so it's crazy that we've hit 4,000 subscribers already. Let's continue to keep growing this channel. I just wanted to show you what my life was like outside of the YouTube channel. I'm just a regular guy. We're going to talk about cabinets and woodworking today. This is not a woodworking channel. This is just going to be like a one-time thing. All right, so today's a little different. I'm going to show you what it's like a day in my life. It's raining here in Pennsylvania, and we're going to deliver a cabinet. So there's our cabinet. It's huge. I'm just going to put it down inside the truck here. As you can see, it rained. I had a board inside the truck here where it didn't get wet. But this cabinet's 7.5 feet tall, 4 foot wide, 18 inches deep. That cabinet is loosely based on this cabinet. I sell a lot of these style cabinets. It's 5 foot tall, 32 wide, 13 deep overall. But as you can see inside, when we get to the place, I apologize. My kids were sick and they got me sick and I can't talk right. When we get to the place that we're delivering the other cabinet to, I'll show you what the inside of that one looks like. It's got 1.5 inch thick shelves, versus to these are only 3/4 of an inch thick. But here's my shop. It's a bit messy. I cleaned up a bit so I could show you guys, but it was way worse than this. That's my table saw I use as a catch-all. This right here is I use this machine the most, and I paid $300 off of Facebook Marketplace for this. It's called a vertical panel saw. I have no idea how people in this business function without this saw. So this saw is great because it functions much like a guillotine. You can go up and down with it, or you could pull this pin out and then it will turn, and then you have to feed it the opposite direction in which the blade turns. So there's an arrow on here, right here, so you have to feed the board that way, which is great because down here these have little rollers, so you could just slide this evenly. But I want to tell you, so as you can see, there's a Makita circular saw mounted in this. When I bought this unit, it had a skill saw. This thing's probably from the 50s, maybe 60s. It's super old. The skill saw, it worked good for about 3 years and then it blew up. And case in point, the saw size that was on this saw was 8.25 inches. And you wouldn't think an inch would make that much of a difference, but it does. So every single saw they sell now is 7.25. So I put it on here, and it mounted perfectly. I had to get a saw that would mount here, and that I could mount it through here, so I didn't have to do any fabrications because I didn't want to fabricate it. But then I found that it wouldn't cut through the whole board, so then I had to put spacers in here and push this whole thing down. But then when I did that, it won't come all the way to the bottom here because it hits off of this. So all these justifications I had to make because the saw blade isn't an inch bigger anymore. So to fix that, I have to, if I'm going to do a cross cut, I have to put this spacer in here on both sides. I could get a full board, but these boards are like 30 bucks now, like no lie. So I only had 2 pieces of one board and I just move them. Now if I cut the other way, if I do what's called a rip cut, I don't have to put the spacer in there. And I will tell you, this cuts like butter compared to the skill saw. Skill saw, it would grab it and then sometimes it would just get stuck and it would pull you in, and it wouldn't like pull you in, but the board would smack your hand against this metal thing and it wasn't fun. The other thing is they don't make a circular saw with a trigger guard anymore. Like, not a trigger guard, but a trigger lock. So that's why this zip tie's on there. No, it's not the most safe thing, and the shutoff switch is up here, so it's always on. I need to relocate the shutoff switch to the floor, so if anything happens, I can just step on it, like switching like a guitar pedal or something like that. Anyway, moving on. This is my drum sander. This machine is fantastic. I don't normally show my machines off, but this is a really remarkable tool. So it's 16 by 32. You can do 16 inches in one pass. It's open-ended, so you can flip the board around and do the other side. And you see how rough this is here? It's super rough. I don't have the right sandpaper on it. Amazon didn't have it at the time, but it's got 150 grit. And look at what's coming out the other side. Totally smooth. One pass. An orbital sander, it'd take you all day. This is, like I said, my table saw. That's my router table. It's got stuff all over it. My wife's always like, why don't you clean up in here? Because the moment you see the mess, you're like, oh, heck no. I'm not going in there. I would highly recommend this saw. If you can afford it, go for it. Because I had two Ryobis before this one. And the Ryobis were both 12 inches. This is a 12-inch sliding miter saw. Anyway, I highly recommend this one because on the bottom you can adjust it more. So say like it says 0 over here, but what happens if it's not entirely straight? You can adjust it from the bottom. The Ryobis you can't. And the first Ryobi I had, the brushes burned out in less than, I only had it for 2 months. I took it back. They gave me another one, but it was never straight and you couldn't make it straight because it was all plastic on the bottom. Whereas this one, yeah, this is a 500. I think I paid 550 bucks for the saw. It might be 650 now. It's definitely worth it. It's still got the same blade on it that I bought with it. It came with a blade. That's the same blade. I've had it for 3 years. We gotta load this cabinet into the back of the truck. I'll show you this real quick before we put it up there, just so I don't forget. So just check that out. So that's what you got for storage inside this beast. They're all reinforced shelves, so they should never ever bend. Lots of space in this bad boy. Here, I'm gonna take a step back so you can see what this looks like in its entirety, because it's huge. All right, we're gonna load it up. All right, the cabinet's loaded. That's what it looks like. This bed is 8.5 foot by 7.5 foot wide, so there's enough room to get a cart, because you need your trusty dolly. This cabinet weighs about 500 pounds. In all honesty, I picked up transmissions that are lighter than this cabinet is. All right, we're gonna get ready to go. I put the emergency brake on, so the emergency brake release is right here. I'm not used to this whole vlogging thing, but hopefully people will watch this, because this is pretty interesting. This is what I do pretty much all day, every day, when I'm not shooting car videos. Speedometer broke. That's kind of disheartening. All the other gauges work. I guess it didn't have lube to the cable, and the cable snapped, and then it took the needle with it. The needle's in the bottom there somewhere. I gotta get that fixed this year. The truck doesn't do over 80 comfortably anyways, so don't really have to worry about getting a speeding ticket. This is about as best first person as you get when driving. This is what it's like when you drive this truck. I love this truck. It's my favorite truck that I've ever owned. It's the only truck I've ever owned. It's a machine, not an appliance. That means when it breaks, you can fix it. And you don't have to get a new one. There's snow on the ground here. There was no snow on the ground back in Pennsylvania. We're in Ohio now. They didn't salt the roads because we're not supposed to get any snow, so. But I delivered the cabinet. As you can see in the back, there's nothing back there, just a dolly. Now we're gonna go to the bank and we're gonna head home and maybe build some more cabinets. Once again, I'm sorry about my voice. It's a little bit messed up today. If you guys like this, put it down in the, if you guys like this, put this in the comment section below. Maybe I'll do some more vlogs in the future. The brakes have always squealed in this thing. We've adjusted them. The brakes are fine. We've adjusted the brakes and they're fine, but for whatever reason, they still squeal. It's hard to convey this, but whenever you shift this into a different gear, it clicks. And that's kind of like why I like older cars, because there's more of a mechanical feel to it. That is the sound of the transmission. I put it up in the third and it clicked in the third. Don't mind the junk on the floor. Also, when you're stopping, you don't have to use the brakes. I'm in fourth gear. I'm going to downshift at the third. And we're slowing down. So the brakes should last longer in theory because you're not really using them that much. Now I'm going to put it in the second. Notice how slow we're going. They're gonna go before we catch up to them. Never had to use the brakes that whole time. Now don't get me wrong, there are times where you're going to need to use the brakes. But if you drive like a normal civilized person and don't speed race, you can get by without even hitting the brakes. I had to drive this to my mechanic's one time with 0 brakes. No brakes whatsoever. He lives a good 16 miles away from me. And I never had to use them. Because if you absolutely have to stop, put it in first gear or second gear and shut it off. The transmission will grab and you'll stop. Not a lot of people know that. On the topic of the braking issue, if you don't have any brakes and you're driving an old car, if you have an emergency brake, usually that's a different line. On this truck, it's a cable operated emergency brake. So you actually have 3 ways to stop the truck. You have the emergency brakes, you have the regular brakes, and you have the transmission. So I mean, if you have to come to a complete stop, you can always put the emergency brake on. It might lock up the rear wheels, you know. You don't want to do it when you're going fast. It's only to stop, you know. Real quick, I just want to clarify, don't ever drive a vehicle that you're not comfortable with driving. I'm just saying, one could drive an older vehicle without the main brakes. Use the transmission to slow down. An e-brake will hold you at a stop sign. I'm just mentioning it on here in case anybody gets involved with losing brakes and you have those other 2 means to stop you. If you don't feel comfortable driving it home, just pull it off the side of the road and get it towed. But this is just a montage of some of the different cabinets that I've built over the years. I just wanted to feature it on this channel. Build lots of rustic furniture. If you're in the western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, panhandle of West Virginia region and you'd like a rustic cabinet built, I'll put my link to my Facebook page in the description, and you can contact me. I build all kinds of furniture, lots of custom cabinets. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the support. This episode's totally different. I figured we'd do it as a 4,000 sub video. I'd show you my life outside of YouTube. Like I said before, I'm just a regular guy. This is a learning experience for me too. And until next time, toodaloo!